You are the master of your own destiny. This is one of the things the United States allows you from its inception. Have that idea that your life is yours and you create your own soul by the actions you take, by your thoughts, but more importantly, by the actions that you take. You will be tested. I am tested regularly, whether it's easier to compromise, whether it's easier to keep my mouth closed, or to say, you know what? No, I disagree. I need to stand up and say something. And in our culture of cancel culture, we're saying where everyone is begging to be offended, as they take that as a badge of honor. No, just say what you know is the truth, and don't be afraid of that. So, and that is a way to keep your soul, the heroic part of your soul, flourishing, so you can live a good life.
Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Buccellato. I'm here today with a wonderful man, and I am so happy to have him on my show. I must admit, I've made 2 or 3 attempts to do this in the past, and he will tell you how funny it was because it never quite connected. Technology, this new stuff. I can't even spell the word, and it's got me locked into it. Anyway, here we have Robert Begley, who is an author, a world traveler, a self-professed, used to be lifelong a New Yorker, a philosopher of many, many things, and a very, very intelligent man. And I'm so proud to have you on the show, Rob. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Carl. It's really a pleasure to be here because I've heard so much about you and I've listened to prior episodes, and you have a lot to say. You've done a lot, and I have a lot to say too. So let's
get right
keep
into
our
it.
audience excited. Yeah.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, first I'm going to give Robert a chance to give you a little background, chat a little bit about himself and his lovely wife, who in herself is quite a lady. We'll chat about that a bit also. But Robert, please tell the folks about yourself.
Sure. Well, as you said, Carl, used to be considered a lifelong New Yorker, born in number 8 out of 9 kids, big Italian and Irish Catholic family. The Italian side is Capobianco, in case you're wondering. And that's my pen name sometimes when I write, and I don't want people to know that I wrote something. I use Anthony Capobianco, which is my middle name.
Which means whitehead, incidentally, in Italian.
Or white leader. Or white leader.
Whitehead.
Yes. Capo is head or leader.
Yeah.
Yes. So big family. Loving family, and learned a lot from my parents, who both passed away back in the 1990s. And all things New York City, I just loved so much, living in the city and being a part. I used to give walking tours in Central Park and all the heroes, monuments. Yeah. I formed an organization called the New York Hero Society back in 2004, and we would just celebrate all the cultural richness and history of New York. Talk about technology. That is what I did to earn a living for much of my life. I was a data center manager for Merrill Lynch and other financial companies. And the way that I would do it, Carl, is I would work for I'd really bust my butt, save money, and then take off 3, 4, 5 years and just enjoy traveling all over. All
years, 4 or 5 years. Man,
then I'd run out of money.
You would have been my hero. I would have loved to do that.
Then I'd run out of money and then have to get another job. And I will say that we were poor. I was on welfare. I hated going to the store with food stamps. And I vowed once I left home, I would never live that way again. So I live a frugal lifestyle. And then when I would earn money, I would sock it away for a lot of rainy days. And so just wrapping up the New York side, in 2020, when the world just completely changed after COVID, lockdowns, riots, my dearest Carrie Ann, she's from Long Island, and we would even say, I try not to be, Carl, I try not to be a New York snob, because I would say, it's not really New York, I mean, New York is New York City.
Yeah, I understand.
but that muscle, that snobbish muscle is withering away. But we had enough, and we saw the economic terms of economic and personal freedom, New York City was ranked number 50 in terms of
Yeah.
freedom, and Florida was number one. I've always loved Florida, been coming since like 1980 down here. We both love the heat, but more importantly, we love the freedom of Florida. So, and then since being here, I started my own business called Speaking with Purpose, where I coach people to tell their story, to overcome fear of speaking, to be able to lead meetings with a certain kind of confidence and assurance. Because a lot of times, Carl, people have the right ideas, but they just don't know how to persuade others.
Right.
They'll ramble on, and
Right.
they won't be concise. They won't tell a story. They'll just give a lot of facts,
Right.
and that's one reason most speeches are forgotten by the next day.
That's
So
right.
that's what I'm doing nowadays, is
That's
helping
right.
people
You know, in,
with
in
that.
the old days when I was still a working man and building businesses, I used to
Hmm.
teach my sales staff very, very simple but effective things. Tell them
Yes.
what you're going to and tell them what you told them. Otherwise, they'll never get the message. You know?
Dale Carnegie, yes,
Yeah,
Dale
Dale
Carnegie. I've
Carnegie,
I've gone through
absolutely,
his program, and
absolutely.
yes, hmm and a person's name is the sweetest sound in the world, right? So you
That's
try
right,
to get that engagement, that connection with somebody, which is
right.
really important because I think Teddy Roosevelt gets credit for this one. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's right,
And so a lot
absolutely
of
right.
times in the environments that I've been in for many years, it's just people talking over heads, and I think that's a shame because
Yeah,
stories need to be heard.
that's right.
And just to flip it back to you, your background is just fabulous. That I've
Right.
done some research
Thank you.
on being on corporate boards and the sales. So in sales, the value of communicating, and
Absolutely,
any organization that
absolutely,
wants to grow should have the ability to communicate effectively.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I agree with that, and I also know that all of mankind, all of our cultures, our
Hmm.
civilization, is a result of passed down stories,
Yes.
information that was gathered together in a generation or by a family cluster of people and
Hmm.
passed it down generation to generation so that they became traditional values. They became messages from the past to the future. How do we live our lives? How do we learn from what the
Yes.
people who came before us experienced and had to endure? That's why I did a show recently on the film Cabrini, because it touched me so
Yeah.
much to,
Hmm.
being an Italian like you, growing up in New York. Every Italian kid knows Mother Cabrini. It's just unheard of that you wouldn't know this
Yes.
hero. But I
Hmm.
didn't know the depth of the story until I saw the film, and I
Great.
realized, oh, it
Yeah.
was so well done. So I too, like you, love New York. I just miss it all the time. Even though I've been living here in Florida since the early 1970s, I made it my business always to get back to New York frequently, many times a year. And in
Hmm.
the last few years, we have not done so because tragically, they've stolen that city away from us. And this is part of what I'm talking about when I talk about cultures and the elitists and how they have made a determination that this nation can no longer be what it was built on. It has to be what they want it to be. And by stripping down all our values and our cultures and our primary centers of where foundations lived and existed, taking the children away from us in the educational scene and what they've done to them.
Hmm.
I think that's an absolute travesty. And I know you're a follower of Ayn Rand, and you've read so much, and John Galt. So I know that you're filled with all of that kind of patriotism and rapture that says, okay, let's get the right stuff out there. Let's get people to hear and understand.
Yes, Carl. So you don't have to like Ayn Rand, frankly, to know American history is filled with heroism. Just a couple of weeks, actually, February 22nd, George Washington's birthday, I gave a talk at Florida State University on the heroism of America and why it is. Why do people pursue the American dream? Why do people die risking their lives? I talked about Ellen Gonzalez's mother, went on this 10-foot boat with like 12 people and it flipped over right before she reached Florida. Every day, people are risking their lives to come for the American dream. But now the broader culture is telling us no, it's not a dream. And in fact, the way that I started that presentation was that if you go to the right, I'll do the audience's right, that's the American dream, and if you go to the left, it's the American nightmare.
Yeah.
And the nightmare says America's evil. It was based on, built on slavery, murdering Indians. And no, America eliminated slavery. It inherited slavery, and
That's
it
right.
subsequently eliminated. 1776, slavery was established on every country on the continent,
That's
and
right.
on the planet.
Right.
And America took those first steps after inheriting this despicable practice, immoral and impractical, because it was a capitalist free North that
Right.
destroyed and wiped out this Southern agrarian slave based South. And we don't hear that.
Yeah.
We don't hear that. And
We
Frederick
don't
Douglass,
hear that over 400,000 people died in that war to preserve freedom and to free people.
yes,
The American
600,000.
600,000. The American
600,000 Americans died
the
to
bloodiest
preserve
war
freedom.
ever for America.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and why is that the case? Why are American educators, academics, what we'll call intellectuals, anybody whose profession is in the field of ideas, the dominant percentage of them are against America, because America is a refutation of their idea that your life is not yours, it belongs to the state. The state should tell you, you're not capable, you're too stupid to know how to take care of yourself. So we, this elite, in whatever profession you identify, we're better at it. And sadly, Carl, if you look at these people's own personal lives, they're pretty much a mess. Every dictator's personal life was a complete mess.
Absolutely.
But therefore they had the power to rule you.
Right.
And this has been tried over and over again.
Over and over. For hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. Where the strong arm man was the paragon. He was the one who said, you will do this or I will cut off your head. And basically, that's what it came to.
And America came and said, no, your life is yours.
And that's
you have the right to life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness. It's yours. We believe you're capable of that.
Right.
And that's why to this day, people want to come here.
And I agree with that. Let's face it, we're all products of immigration. We're all products of immigration. If we go back far enough, we can even trace the original American tribes that came across the Aleutian Straits from Asia into the American continent. So we're all products of immigration. But there's nothing wrong with aspiring to live in a better life and coming to a nation that would offer that and provide it to you. What I see is wrong is what the government is doing at the borders, opening these borders up to bring in millions of people for political purposes. That has nothing to do.
Future voters. That's all.
They want voters. There are like 14 or 15 states that are now saying that if you have a driver's license, they will send you a ballot in the mail. There is no other country on earth that allows legal voting by mail. Only this country. And it's only started within the last 20 years or so because of the Progressive Party and what they knew was going to be a paradigm shift politically. So they did it for political reasons. They did it to provide cheap labor to the elites. And, when I say the elite, listen, this country's been very good to me. I live a very comfortable life. I've been a very successful man, and I've been involved with very successful businesses, and I've known wonderfully successful people. Wonderful people. But I have also been exposed to the other side, the people who are greedy and the people who want nothing more than power. And the elitists that you see who have already ruined Europe, they're now convincing the leaders here that we should be globalists, one world globalists, which means not only in each country, but the entire world would be encapsulated by a handful of people who tell you how to live and what to live. Can you imagine? You can't. Your children will never be. Our children will never be able to tinker with a gas engine because they want to eliminate them. I mean, that's a rite of passage to most teenage boys getting their fingers dirty in a car.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Europe, And I've been all over Europe. As you said at the outset, I've been all over the world. Europe is looking in the rearview mirror. There's no real innovations happening because
Right,
they
right,
sadly, the dominant, the leaders just buy
right,
into this what we'll call collectivism
right.
philosophy, whether it is some kind of fascism, some kind of communism, some kind of statism. It is the individual is subordinate. And you're going back to New York, we've seen the best of New York. I think New York is similarly looking in the rearview mirror.
Yes,
There,
yes,
just people are abandoning it. 1,000 people a day are coming to Florida. That says something. When people are flocking to, just the way people are coming to the United States from all over the world, people are coming from all over the United States to Florida
right.
because we have more freedom. We
That's right.
uphold that freedom.
That's
We
right.
see what the value of the founding fathers did and how that gives you. I mean, you said you're fortunate in having a successful life, but you also earned that. You took the effort. You could have
Absolutely.
just said, no, I'm going to sit back.
Absolutely.
I'm going to sit back and just
Absolutely.
give me. I'll
Yeah.
cross the border illegally
Unlike
and just.
unlike unlike half of the members of the United States Senate, I know what it means to sign the front of an employment check rather than just the
Yes,
back. I know what it means to
yes.
have to make payroll at the end of the week and there's not enough money, so I didn't get paid, but they
Hmm.
got paid. I understand what it means to sacrifice to build, but I also am very thankful for a nation that allowed me the opportunity to do
Hmm.
such things, to work
Hmm.
hard and to establish and aspire. I mean, what was I? I was a kid from the streets of Brooklyn with holes in my shoes, missing every other lunch because we didn't have any money. And
Yeah.
when you aspire for something and you find in a world that allows you the
Hmm.
opportunity to say, okay, work harder, you can get somewhere. Work harder. And you do, and God shines on it. And I'll
And
never forget that. And I'm
And
forever thankful.
Carl, when you and I were kids, when we saw somebody wealthy, we didn't hate them. We didn't
No,
resent them. We were like, I want to be like that too. I
aspire,
want.
right?
That's right. That you aspire to. That's what I said when I grew up on welfare. I was like, I had what I'll call rich neighbors. They had color TVs. I had a black and white freaking TV. 11 of us would gather around it to watch the Academy Awards.
Yeah,
And so, but I was like, I want to be like that. I want to earn a good enough living that I can take 5 years off,
yeah, right,
and then be able to go back to work again after that money runs out because the benefit. This is the benefit of being in the United States, where there is something to aspire to, and being wealthy, it's very much a shame. If I can go to Ayn Rand, because you brought her up. She has an excellent article called The Money Making Personality, and she distinguishes the one who actually goes out and creates wealth, the types like you, from the ones who the money appropriators, and
right,
they're the ones who sign only the
yeah,
the front of the government checks and
right,
not the back of the government
right,
checks, and they're involved in all the cronyism that we see today. There's not
right,
this separation. They deal in
right,
favors instead of in trading value for value. And so this is again an American phenomenon where we use the term to make money, meaning to earn it, not
right,
to print it.
right,
When the government runs out of it, and not to force somebody to hand it over like a highway robber.
right.
And so, but all of this comes back to you talked about storytelling in the very beginning. We can go the Western tradition from the Odyssey and the Iliad, these stories that were
Absolutely
told
right,
verbally,
right,
and now if we come to the 1770s, the United States, the birth of the United States, which came out of the Enlightenment era, all that's trying to be crushed and dismissed because no, they were white slave owners. And it's like, no, not, they're the ones, as I said earlier, they're the ones who destroyed, and there's no slavery. Very few countries, actually, they're also silent about the slavery that does exist today
it still
because it's
does.
not the
Yeah,
United States,
it still does. There
and
are more. I read somewhere that there are more people enslaved today around the world. Not only enslaved, but in the sex trafficking trade.
oh,
There are
what
more
a
people
shame.
that
What a
are
shame.
enslaved in those things around the world today than ever were in the history of
Mhm.
the world. That
Often.
includes the time of slavery in the fields. That includes the
Hmm.
times of slavery in Europe and
Hmm.
the Caribbean for the sugar fields, you know,
Yeah.
and the Chinese for the railroads and all of that kind of stuff, you know.
Hmm.
It includes
Hmm.
all of that. There are more people enslaved in the world today than ever in history, and nobody says a
Yeah.
word about it.
Yeah. But this is
Unbelievable.
where I applaud you with your podcast, Carl, because you're at least talking about these ideas and as we say,
Yeah.
celebrating the founding of the country. What I do every July 4th, I used to do this in person in New York. I bring a copy of the Declaration of Independence. I would read it. In fact, in Union Square, the flagpole in the center of the
Yeah.
park has all the words of the Declaration around it. And I would gather groups there, and I would have them read it. Now I do it via Zoom. You'll be invited if you can break away
Please
from
do. I'd love that.
if you can break away from your holiday
No,
festivities.
no,
But what
nothing's
I
more
do
important than that. I agree with
and
you.
what we do, Carl, is a lot of foreigners tell their story. One friend, my friend Michael, born in Czechoslovakia, not even Czech Republic, July 4th, 1976. I was like, you're the bicentennial baby. And he would say he has an American flag. I went to his induction, becoming an American citizen. And what happens on these calls, after we do the reading, then we talk about the ideas and we kind of tell what does the Declaration mean to you? The older people, they're dis, they're dismayed at the direction of the country, because those values are being pushed aside. But then they're they're totally elated to hear from the younger foreign people who are
Oh, sure.
see the value of America. One kid from
Yeah.
India told his mom, he's like, I'm going to read the Declaration. And then he told us this story, and she's like, what does that have to do with you? And he's like, this is the greatest document. It's one of two greatest. The Constitution is the other one. So, but here's an example where my goal is celebrating this, not on July 4th publicly, but every single day, because this is what the country needs.
That's right. We
Understanding
need
those
a
ideas.
we need a reminder of these things constantly.
Yes. Yes.
I know a young man who was a pastor of a church that I attended for many years, and very strong, faithful man, but also a
Mm-hmm.
strong patriot. And
Mm-hmm.
he was recently told for the last year and a half or so by the leaders of his church that he couldn't speak about these political things because they were afraid of losing their status. He
Mm-hmm.
finally had it up to here, as we used to say in Italy, and he broke away and formed his own church and brought
Mm-hmm.
half of the people with him. And he
Yeah.
stands every day, every Sunday, and speaks the word of God, but then does just what the black robers used to do before the revolution, says that as a man of God, he must stand and say, patriotism is essential. You must believe and protect this country, because if you believe in God, with this one of the only nations left on earth where you can speak the name Jesus Christ without being
Yeah.
persecuted. And if you
Yeah.
can't protect that, what are you going to
Mm-hmm.
protect? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe
Yeah.
in those things so wholeheartedly. So you had a program that said uh, the Hero Show. Tell us about the Hero Show.
Yes, so the Hero Show with my dear friend Andy Bernstein, another Brooklynite from days way past. I met Andy in 1984, and that was the thing that we bonded over was heroes, and and so we did it together for about 2 years, and I got to cover all of my heroes from Spider-Man to George Washington to Thomas Edison,
Oh, wonderful!
right to Christopher Columbus. I made sure we did an episode that it's called Columbus Discovered America.
Right.
When we were kids, there was no question about that. He didn't encounter. He brought Western civilization to a
That's right.
place that was roving, warring tribes.
Right.
Okay, let's
Absolutely.
call it what it was. They
Right.
just met a bigger tribe and
That's
a
right.
more advanced tribe, and diseases had something to do with that too, which is
Right.
how the United States became the United States, and not Mexico, for instance,
Yes.
which integrated with them without having some kind of more philosophic conflict. And so Andy and I would get to what I loved about it was I had a whole list, and he overlapped many of my heroes, but he would come up with a lot of heroes who I never heard of. So I'd have to research every week, like Irina Sendler, okay, this Polish woman who saved thousands of babies in Poland when the Nazis came in, and she would mark them down as not as being Christian and not
Right.
Jewish, and these little kids. And I never knew this story, but it turns out that they filled her. They got her, some of the kids, to meet her later in life, and to just share this joy. And then Viktor Frankl, someone who's, who made the best, turned the worst type of environment into something where he could promote his, not only his life, but save thousands of people's lives.
Right.
So yeah, heroes are part of every culture.
That's right.
If we go back in Indian culture, certainly Western Greek culture, the Norse heroes, Christianity is filled with heroes. And so because that's such a universal topic, and what does it do? It inspires us, right? It inspires us to become what is now known as like the best version of ourselves. So that was why I did that program for a couple of years, and it was a real joy.
So I have always believed, let me see if you and I agree on this. I have always believed that I've met many heroes, many no longer with us, some still alive. But I have always believed after meeting these people, they're ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Yes.
They're people just like you and I, with the same fears, the same trepidations, because courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is overcoming your fear to do what you know has to be done.
Yes. 100%. I totally agree with you there. And I would say this, there's kind of an expression, you don't want to meet your heroes because they might not live up to
may not live up to your expectations, right?
And often they don't. Athletes,
right.
Baseball players, I'll tell you, Mickey Mantle, my cousin Nicky Liso, I could say his name, his fire department for a gazillion years. When he was a kid, he saw Mickey Mantle giving autographs, and one father brought his son, and Mantle was drunk, and it was those old fountain pen things, and he like blew the ink on the poor little kid, and my cousin Nicky said, I hate the Yankees. After that, he just hated Mickey Mantle because he
destroyed his image.
Yeah, exactly. And Mantle even himself said, don't call me a hero later in life, and don't drink, and don't do these things. That kind of made him more of a hero. But the point there is the moral character.
Right.
If we talk about like a George Washington, the moral character of a hero, that's beyond a doubt. When you know that, that's the kind of person you really want to meet, not a celebrity, so to speak, who doesn't have the kind of skill set and communication set.
Right.
I know you want to jump in there.
That's right. You think about that. Somebody was talking about that the other day. That there are celebrities in this country today who are celebrities only because they made pornographic films. Only because they wear certain clothes and people mimic it. They've never done anything in their whole lives of merit, and yet the media builds them up to be something special. There's a scene in the Bronx Tale. You remember the movie The Bronx Tale? Chaz Palminteri.
Well, he wrote it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The father says, the father, who is Robert De Niro, says to his son, he says, that mobster, he's not a hero. I'm a hero. I get up every day. I go to work. I drive a bus, put food on the table. I'm the hero. And that's right. That's absolutely right.
I agree. I totally agree. And that lesson was learned. The boy learned the lesson from that, because we always have these moments. You talk about courage, Carl. We always have these moments when we can compromise. We can become what Aristotle would call a coward, or possibly even rash, or become courageous.
This is a perfect segue. You set me up. I didn't ask for it, but it's a perfect segue for me to ask you about your wife, who I think is a hero. Tell us about her time of courage.
First, I have to clarify. She refuses to marry me. We both divorced. We
All
both
right, forget
divorced,
that part.
and so, but yes, for Carrie Ann is my dearest on the planet. We're going on 10 years together. Every 8th of the month, we celebrate a month anniversary. So we're like at
A month
111
anniversary.
months. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, she walked away. She was her job, her goal in life since she was 5 years old was to be a teacher. She taught her younger brother. She'd come home from school and teach him lessons, and then taught in higher education for 25 years, John Jay College and then Marymount College, and then 2020 when the world turned upside down and went completely woke, the president of the school basically said you can't teach this European Western stuff. It's you have to change your curriculum, and so she just walked away. She said I'm not. She's had hundreds of students who did not matter, and one important thing, Carl, is they did not know her philosophy, her ideas. She taught them how to think. That was her point, not what to think.
Right.
And that's what all
And isn't that what
academia should
teaching
do.
should be? Teaching
Yes,
people. I mean,
exactly.
you
Yes,
used to go to a university to expand and teach you how to
yes,
think and how to
yes.
exchange freely with other people and
Yeah,
dialogue, whether you had agreement or not. As a matter of fact, if there was no agreement, it was better for you because
you
the
stretch that
exchange.
muscle.
Sure, the
Yeah.
exchange was much
Hmm.
better for you to
Hmm.
expand your mindset. Now, if you're not in that cookie cutter,
It's a shame.
terrible,
Yeah, it is a
terrible.
shame. However, there are some good alternatives. There's one college called Reliance College in Chicago. It's set to open next year. Carrie is one of the board of advisors, and it will stand for that, Carl. So anyone who has high school age kids and want an actual college experience,
Yeah.
reliancecollege.org is one plug I can give
Well,
because
that's great.
that's needed. I didn't go to college. You probably know the school. I went to Technical Career Institutes
Yeah.
when I was 18. I told my mom, I said, I'm going to college. She said, you're paying. And I was like, yeah, I know I'm paying, but this is where I'm going. And it was RCA Institutes for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then I just have a 2-year degree in electronics technology. But I'm an avid reader. I probably read about every month, at least 20 books a month,
Wow,
mostly
20 a
Audible.
month. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's quite a
Yes.
lot. Let me
I'm still
just put
waiting
in
for your
another
book.
plug for another college since you brought it up.
Yes.
There is a college called Hillside University, and
Hillsdale.
pardon
Hillsdale
me,
College.
Hillsdale University, and they
Michigan.
accept
Yes.
no government
Government.
funds.
Yes. More
So
than 100 years
that's
old.
the place where
Yes.
you can go and get an education, a free education, not a
I
free
agree.
education, but a dedicated education for thinking and learning. So
And courses on the website. Anyone,
yeah, I've
I'm a
taken many on
donor.
the website.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I
I'm a
know about it.
donor. They have
Yeah,
Aristotle. They have U.S.
yeah.
Constitution. Victor Hanson Davis is
Victor
one of my
Hanson
top.
Davidson, right?
Yeah, one of the
He's
top
brilliant.
thinkers,
He's
and
brilliant.
he
He
has
really
this
is.
course on citizenship. Just coming back to what you brought up earlier,
Right.
all these people come across the border. They have no idea what the United States background is. They just want free stuff and in exchange for voting, and so the idea of citizenship, that course, highly recommend. And I know one of my dear friends has her daughter is studying on campus there. I think she's in the 3rd year.
Great
So
school.
Hillsdale College definitely recommend as
Great
well.
school.
Yeah. Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about your tribute to your dad. That very
Oh,
much touched me because in my book I write about how my dad died in my arms, and it was a very
oh,
moving thing to me.
yeah.
But tell us about your tribute to your dad.
So my father, he had 3 strokes in life. He drank a lot, sadly, and turned me off to all alcohol, frankly. But it was hard raising 9 kids, and he even sold peanuts at Yankee Stadium. And just he had a hard life raising a large family, along with my mother, of course. And 1994, summer of 1994, he had his 3rd stroke, and we didn't think he had much time to live. So we would all go to visit him in Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan, where I was born. And the one day we did not go was the day before Father's Day. And because all the kids knew we were going to go there on Father's Day with gifts in hand and cards and all that. And I was the first one to arrive and was told, oh, he passed away like very coldly. I'll never forget it. And then I was just grasping that. And two of my sisters came in and they heard the news too, and then it just became a scene. And so a few months later, and frankly, this was I brought my first wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and this was the way she was going to meet all my siblings, meet my father, because he knew she was from. When I told my last conversation with him, I told him she was from Mexico, and he's thinking, "Oh, Catholic, I like that." His face lit up, thinking that, and so we get there, we're told the news, and we're all sad, and we have a memorial service. And then a few months later, I'm actually down in Mexico, and I decide to write. I'm missing him. I'm missing all my family, and I decide to write a song. I was in a rock band when I was younger, and my best friend and I played music together, and so I wrote the song called Father's Day because it was on Father's Day that he passed away. And then a couple of years later, I got some of my childhood friends to turn it into a song. And I wanted to add images. I wanted to give the feel of what it was like, one of nine, because, I did not get, I could say this, I was not the first son and I wasn't the last child. So I didn't really get that attention necessarily, but we had a good, we were close. We were definitely close. And so I wrote this song, the lyrics, and sang it, and turned it into a song, and put it up on YouTube. And I play it often. I play it on his birthday, on Father's Day, and just any time of significance for me. So that is, I'll say something interesting, Carl. During lifetime, I was closer to my mother, but in death, like my father has kind of risen. In my opinion, it's kind of hard to describe.
I know what you mean.
Okay, so
I understand what you mean. I had a very similar situation. My father
tell me
happened
about
to
it.
die the day after Father's Day, and I know exactly what you mean because he was an alcoholic, and we had a strained relationship. And it wasn't until after he passed that I got closer and closer to him, and I realized how much I miss him and how much he meant to me.
It's amazing. Like, do you know the Mark Twain adage where he says, "When I was 13, my father was the stupidest man on the planet."
But
and then
when
in
I was
7 years,
1 in 20.
and then he says, but by the time I turned 20, I couldn't believe how smart he became.
Yeah, 21. When I was 1 in 20, it was amazing to me how much he'd learned over that 1 year.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a lot of similarities, you and I.
Family is big in both of our lives, Carl, and that's one reason when Ed, our mutual friend, Ed told me about you. I was like, oh, I got to know this man. I got to hear his stories, and I can tell a story or two myself, but and hence being on the podcast.
Well, let me give a shout out to Ed Pozzuoli because he is a very dear friend of both of us, and unbeknownst to you, 10 minutes before the show, I got a text from him saying, "You want to go to lunch?" And I said, "Ken, I'm going to be talking with Robert." So he says, "Oh, okay." He's a great man, and I admire him, and I count him as one of my dearest friends, I must say. And he's a.
And I met him late in life, but I'm sorry, I met him late in life. I think 2018, and I told Carrie, I'm my kind of guy. Like this guy's my kind of guy.
Definitely.
And even though like the both of you moved to Florida way sooner than I did, that New York part never leaves, right? It never leaves you. No. It's just who
he and I lived probably 8 or 10 blocks away from each other.
Yeah.
But I'm a little older than his older brother, and we went to the same high school, but we didn't meet, of course, because they were different age levels. But same background,
same stories, same background, same stories, and thing. And for me, you have the pure Italian on your side. For me, with the Irish side, my father, as being a Begley, 2 days of the year he wouldn't drink. You probably know them: New Year's Eve and St. Patrick's Day. He's like, I don't want to be with
St.
the
Patrick's
amateurs.
Day wouldn't drink.
He's like, I don't want to be with the amateurs. So, but in New York, every block there's either an Italian restaurant or an Irish bar, and many of them have both. So I would enjoy both sides of the heritage, and no, I would make it clear, Carl, no slaveholders in my background.
Right.
Grandmother born in Bari,
Neither
Italy,
were
and my
we.
father.
Neither were we. No slaveholders. My people came from
Hmm.
Sicily, and my grandfather came here in
Yes.
1910 when he
Hmm.
was 16 years old, 14 years old,
Mm.
and he went into the United States Army in World War One, and not only earned a medal for valor, but he also earned his right to citizenship and took his citizenship papers as soon as he got out of the army. So
Mm.
consequently, when my father and his brothers were born, his
Hmm.
father had dual citizenship. He was an American and
Hmm.
an Italian. So we have passed
Hmm.
that down through the generations.
Wow.
And I'm very
Amazing.
proud of him.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. My father was in World War II. He was at the Panama Canal. He was in the Marines, and that was where he was stationed to protect the
yeah,
canal. So one of my trips around the world was I started in the Atlantic Ocean and went through all the locks and ended in the Pacific Ocean. And I took his ashes and I put some of
oh,
them
you
in
poured
the
the
Panama
ashes there.
Canal.
How wonderful. That's
Yeah,
great.
I put them in the
That is
Great Barrier
great.
Reef. Wherever we travel, I bring my parents' ashes and my older sister Teresa. I always put them
That's
someplace
that's
of
great.
significance. Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
great. I've
Ireland.
often
Oh, I got
told.
to tell you, Ireland. The first time I went to Ireland, 1999. I'll say this fast. I got a map, and he was born right at the border, the northern, the mm, Northern Ireland, not the Republic, which is what we call
Yeah,
Ireland.
yeah.
So run by the British. And I go to the border with my ex-wife, and I have his ashes with me, and it's pitch black because the conflict between North and South. There's a border patrol there,
Yeah.
and I'm like, look, I just want to see where he was born. This little hut right across the border, and it's pitch black. The guy, the Irishman is showing whose name was Begley. Actually, he's showing no relation, but he's showing me the place, and we see this helicopter right above us, like in the dark, because they just saw us. A flashlight, and they might have thought
Right,
somebody was,
right.
putting a bomb together or something. And I was like, okay, enough excitement. Next morning, we go to the church where he was baptized because he got baptized. He was born sickly, so they baptized him right away. And all the signs, every telephone pole has, you're in IRA, territory. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. I just want to put his ashes. And my ex-wife is like, I'm not even getting out of the car. This is too scary. So we go up to St. Patrick's in Armagh, and I put his ashes there. And the church bells ring. It's 4 o'clock, and I was like, "Wow, did you get that?" And it was like, it was beautiful. It was something he
That's
definitely would have
wonderful.
wanted. And then a few years ago, I took six of my siblings to Ireland to see where he was born, and it's still like a trip for the ages. So I could go on about him, but
I
yeah.
love that you did that. I had the good fortune of taking my grandsons to
Mm-hmm.
Sicily,
Mm.
and my sons. I have two sons,
Yeah. Oh,
and
great.
but
Generations.
I didn't take them all together. I took them one at a
Okay.
time, just
Ooh.
bonding with them, taking them back to the
Yes.
little village where my grandparents were born, to the church that was built hundreds of years ago, that's no more than 12 foot wide, made out of
Mm-hmm.
stone with a big wooden
Mm-hmm.
doorway. And I
Mm-hmm.
brought them up in the church, and there's a big concrete baptismal font. And I said to them, now put your hands on here. Every one of your ancestors was baptized inside this font.
Wow.
Now walk three
Mm-hmm.
steps away, and there's a concrete altar in front of a cross. Now, this is where they received their first communion, got married, and then when they died, their funeral was taking place here. Now, let's go across the street to the cemetery and meet them. And we went. I felt it was my purpose to bring them there, and they
Yes.
to this day. I mean, they just talk about that, and they
Yeah.
relish the story, and
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing to know where you're from. I believe that you give children You give them roots to know who they are and where they came from, and then you give them wings
Hmm.
and let them live their lives. And
Yeah.
so
And also, Carl, if I could interject here, you give them experiences. Okay, you
yeah,
could give them the equivalent of that amount in dollars
yeah,
and
but
say, here, this is a gift. But no, instead you chose, because I'm the same way. I'm like, no, I'm about experiences that you
right,
will remember. If we come
right,
back to storytelling and public speaking, that's
right,
kind of the things that stick in your mind.
yeah,
Whereas if you just give them a card, and the Italians, they always put the cash in the cards,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the way
A
they
boost, yeah. When I ran my business, I at one point I was the CEO and president of a conglomerate of 27 companies in
do.
three different countries in two different continents. And so when I would travel, I would, not for business, but when I would travel on vacation, I would take my children with me. It was an
Hmm.
entourage, and all of
Hmm.
my cousins, and they would go with their children, with their wives, and they
Hmm.
say, "Why do you want to drag the kids along for?" I want them to know the world. I want them to
Yes.
see and smell the smells and listen to the sounds and meet the people on the street. I want them to
Hmm.
learn about this world, because there's
Yeah.
something about traveling. You know it. You can never get it. The books are great. I love the books. I've been a reader of history all my life. But when you walk down the street and the little side path, and you hear the people talking, and you see
Hmm.
the people along the coast mending their nets, and how they brought in the fish that morning,
Hmm.
you can't replicate that. That's the way to learn about life. So
Yes, I agree.
hopefully,
But
hopefully we'll
there's
do it again.
yeah, yeah, and there's one little footnote there, though, that at least I could speak for myself, and you could probably speak for yourself as well. I love traveling the world, knowing I'm coming back to the
Oh
United
yeah.
States,
Oh yes.
because no place is like the United. You
There's
know it
nowhere like
immediately.
America. Nowhere like the
Yeah,
United
you know
States.
it
Nowhere like
immediately
it.
that you're not in the United States when you're not,
Absolutely.
and so.
Absolutely.
But I love that. I love that you did that with them individually. So you gave
Yeah.
them that personalized
Very
experience
important.
that they
My
will have.
grandson Bobby, my eldest son's youngest son, Bobby, is an author. He's just published his eighth book
Ooh.
called Lincoln's Ghosts. He's a great writer. He's married,
Mm-hmm.
has two children. He's the historian for the state of Florida. And if you sit and talk with him, he will tell you his love of history and knowledge of things came with his trips with Poppy. Because I took him to New
Oh, good.
York, I took him to
Great.
Italy, I took him, on cruises.
Mm-hmm.
That was his foundation and love for history
Yeah.
and for experience. And he's a
Yeah.
terrific writer, terrific writer.
That's fabulous.
So,
If I could bring up another hero, E.H. Harriman, who was he was a stockbroker early 20th century, and then became a railroad entrepreneur. He's not a household name, but he would do what you did. Well, no, not the same thing. He loved travel, but he would take the whole family with him on, and they would be business slash travel experiences. And he brought them all up to Alaska. And when I went to Alaska, which was the 48th, no, 49th of the 50 states that I visited, there's a glacier path that he named, where he brought his family there, and they found all these little glacier islands, and he named one Princeton and another one Columbia, like after the Ivy League schools. But Harriman was about expanding your knowledge and your experience for his children, and then he had scientists and engineers on these big cruise ships that that he saw the significance of integrating both family
right,
and business
right.
in his own life for, again, these memorable experiences. So E.H. Harriman is, in fact, one of my favorite quotes about him is, he feared neither God nor J.P. Morgan. So the
J.P. Morgan
stature.
was a man to fear in those days.
Yes, and Harriman was the little giant, I think they called him, and he was like, he just knew his way. And when the 1906 earthquake happened in San Francisco, he saved thousands of lives by setting up transportation to bring in food uh, to to San Francisco, and then a couple of years later they had droughts in L.A., Los Angeles, and he set up irrigation canals through his transportation. So
Yeah.
here's an example. E.H. Harriman, every school kid should know this hero's name, but he's like buried in you know in an avalanche of dust
Right.
because he's not politically correct, sadly.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to
Mhm.
tell you that in the show notes will be all the contact information, how to reach Robert, communicate with
Yes.
him, email address,
Hmm.
his website, everything that you can reach and learn more about him. I'm sure he'd be happy to respond to you if anything that any questions that you have.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
Hmm.
as I always say, if you like this kind of show, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, tell us that you like it, so that we can bring more people like this. Because
Perfect.
this is what I started this show for, to
Yeah.
communicate about life. Two
Mhm.
people who have lived and experienced and are willing to share with you the experiences of life. Now, before we close, because we're at 50 minutes
Mhm.
already, before we
Yep.
close, I'm going to ask Robert to just answer one thing for me, and that is talk to me about don't let the hero in your soul disappear.
Don't let the hero in your soul perish is what John
Right.
Galt says in Atlas Shrugged. And I actually changed it around. My motto is, which just so you know, I write every day. I read my own eulogy, which is a way to kind of enjoy. I've written it, and the way I phrase it as my motto is, "Let the hero in your soul flourish." So instead of having two negatives, don't let the hero in your soul perish. I'm
Right.
like, no,
Right.
let it flourish. And what that means to me is that it's what we've been talking about for 45, 50 minutes, which is you are the master of your own destiny. This is one of the things the United States allows you from its inception, have that idea that your life is yours and you create your own soul by the actions you take, by your thoughts, but more importantly by the actions that you take. When we were kids, they'd say actions speak louder than words, and
Right.
because of that, because of those choices you make and build your character, this moral character point that I mentioned earlier, we need to keep that alive. First in ourselves, then in our beautiful country. And what that means is there you will be tested. I am tested regularly, whether it's easier to compromise, whether it's easier to keep my mouth closed, or to say, you know what? No, I disagree. I need to stand up and say something. And in our culture of cancel culture, we're saying where everyone is begging to be offended, as they take that as a badge of honor. No, just say what you know is the truth, and don't be afraid of that. So, and that is a way to keep your soul, the heroic part of your soul, flourishing, so you can live a good life.
So basically, what I just heard this man say, if you love this nation, stand up for it.
Yes.
Be proud of it. Speak the
Yes.
truth. Don't allow people to crush down your ability to say what's right and what's wrong.
Hmm.
Don't depend on the news, the media to do it.
Hmm.
Write to your congressmen,
Yeah.
your senators. Write to
Hmm.
the newspaper editors. Write to the directors of the local television news networks, and let them know that we stand for this country. We stand for freedom. We stand for freedom of
Yes.
speech. We stand for all the
Perfect.
things that were guaranteed us in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Hmm.
We are Americans, and we will speak out in favor of this country. And I want to tell you, folks, all this same thing I tell you every week. I know you have your own story. Everybody has their own story, and no one can tell it like you can. Write it down. Tell it to your loved ones. Tell it to the people that you meet every day. Let it be known, because when it's too late, it's too late. If you don't share that
Yes.
wisdom, the world loses it. Share the wisdom. Stand. We're a couple of old guineas from Brooklyn, but from New York, but we're still guys who say, stand for this country. Be
Yes.
proud of this country.
And
It's the
criticize it
best
when it
in the
should
world.
be, Carl. I'm sorry. There are some other things, even in the past, that should be criticized. So it's not as if we're Pollyannas
No,
about America.
no. But there's
However,
enough good to
everything
talk
else you
about.
said, yes,
Especially right now when they're trying
yes,
to suppress speech, when they're trying
yes.
to tell you
Thank you
you
for
have to
that.
fit into a cubbyhole. Right
Yes.
now is the time to
Hmm.
speak.
Yeah.
It goes
And
without
Bev,
saying it's
that's
the
my
time to vote,
grandmother.
but it's the time to speak.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
that'll
well,
come
Robert,
out.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and I'll see you in person next time I'm down there.
Absolutely.
Visiting.
We'll have a little cup of espresso together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of the show today. God bless you all. Have a great week. Bye-bye.